Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. So today we have Tom Clancy's Division on the chopping block, and Division 2 especially. And one of the things I wanted to take some time to do is just do a quick reflection on what the Division has had to deal with and how Ubisoft's growth and the growing pains of their expansion is affecting their community. At the end of the day, we could probably talk about how on the business side, things may look like it's, shaping up for the company, but there is an unintended consequence or maybe a risk that they're willing to take that is not necessarily out there if you're not listening to what the community members are talking about regarding the Tom Clancy games. So what I'm definitely pointing to is the fact that Ubisoft is one of the biggest game development publishers in the world, and their growth model right now is really affecting a lot of its communities, while in some cases, some other communities are probably enjoying what is being put out there. So let's look at, say, their other franchises, like look at Assassin's Creed and especially Assassin's Creed Valhalla. They just announced a big DLC coming in March, of next year or something like that. And I was quite surprised to see that they're actually, pretty much continuing the game. I think because the game did very well, it sold. It was one of the few games that came out in 2020, which was crazy that Ubisoft was able to put out 3 games in 2020. But I guess it's the benefit of them having had those games in development for longer. And all that was needed was just to get those games to the final stretch. Those were Immortals, Phoenix Rising, Watch Dogs Legion, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which multiple studios usually work in their games as well. But at the same time, games like Tom Clancy Division has been left in the dark, especially the Division 2. And I think this is probably due to the fact that the studio that's in charge has taken on a lot of these other projects. So if we look at, say, Ubisoft Paris and some of the other studios that worked on Immortals, Phoenix Rising, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and maybe even some other studios across the world, I think those studios mainly had to just pull in all of their weight, and they probably have smaller or much more narrow focus than, say, Ubisoft Massive. Ubisoft Massive right now is in a position where its focus is super broad. And when I mean super broad, I'm talking about the studios right now responsible for developing 3 of Ubisoft's major IPs. Now, I don't know if there's any other Ubisoft studio that's actually working on these caliber of video games at the same time, but what we're seeing right now is that Ubisoft, in a sense, is designating this particular studio to work on Star Wars. There's a new Star Wars game that's coming out, and also right now completing, or at least I would say in my opinion, finishing James Cameron's Avatar game, basically their own game called Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, whatever the name is. At the same time, there's some support for the Division 2 going on from that studio, and in my own personal opinion, I think that they're also working on a Division 3 game. Now, it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy. And some of you have disagreed with me, and some of you have even said, you're not necessarily certain about that. And I say, that's actually pretty, that's a very fair judgment. I can understand why people may believe that it's not possible that they'll be working on a Division 3 game right now, whereas I think that that's actually what it is that they're doing. So nonetheless, however you want to factor it, you have to still concede that whatever they're doing within that particular studio really is having a great effect right now on what's going on. And I think the best way to look at it is to take that approach of saying, where, are the resources being allocated? Because that's basically all it is. They allocate a bunch of resources, they're able to get their games out. And in the case of studios like Massive, Ubisoft Paris, and Ubisoft Montreal or Toronto, a lot of what these studios would do is they'll pretty much have one studio that's spearheading the project with its creative director, its game designers, and all of the other teams, while the other support studios are basically helping with things like DLC, maybe potential future content that they have in mind. This is how I think Ubisoft's structure works. But here's what's going on right now in Massive Ubisoft. So a lot of the team from the Division 1 were moved over to work on Avatar, while some stayed behind and worked on Division 2 and finished it up. And then once the Star Wars project was announced, some of the people from the Division 2 actually got moved over to the to the Star Wars project. People like Frederick Thylander. In fact, I think Drew, who's also one of the AI designers from the Division 1, also worked on the Division 2, got moved to the Avatar project. But nonetheless, even with some of these, focus, or I would say top players that I'm focusing on in this video, I mean, other than them, who else has been moved to these projects, and why is Massive still hiring heavily for the Star Wars project? And I think these are two questions you have to ask yourself, because if you open up the Star Wars job, application page, you're going to see that they actually have a lot of positions that they're looking for people to come in and work for. There's so many job openings, and to me, it seems like the Star Wars team is, in my estimation, being built from ground up. I mean, you see me scrolling more and more and more, and I mean, look at all of these different, openings. Now, what's even much more interesting is these openings span across multiple studios. You see the city. This is Bucharest. This is Malmö. This is Annecy. Annecy did the Iron Horse raid for the Division 2. This is something that they worked on. And so you can basically see that they're actually working, in tandem with Massive to get this game out. You also see something from Ubisoft Shanghai. I just saw something just now. And so basically the team is being built up in multiple locations in order for them to be able to get this project out there. So again, I think these growing pains are not, growing pains that could be ignored. But again, one of their strategies with Ubisoft and the way that they do things is that they actually keep a lot of these things under wraps. So even if you ask yourself and say, where are the rest of the developers? What are they actually working on? What are people like Yannick actually doing other than postponing our, February content? I think they're actually working on another Division project, and this is why we're seeing that the Division right now has somewhat stalled in terms of new content coming out, because I mean, what is the logical conclusion? The logical conclusion is that after this new content piece that even got postponed, whenever it drops, we're going to have a winding down of the Division in terms of what the game is about. And then from there on, we're more than likely going to be moving on to whatever it is Massive has next, and then whatever Massive has next after that. And then potentially, I think a Division game will come in between the Avatar game and the Star Wars project. These are my own estimations nonetheless. I mean, it's kind of logical to me. I don't really know how everybody else factors all of this, but to be very honest and to be very fair, the one thing though that I would say needs to be looked out for is the fact that Ubisoft Massive and Ubisoft in general are in a position where they are probably taking a very big risk that if the payoff does not match this risk that they're taking, they really are in a position where they can harm themselves. But if they make themselves a good Star Wars game, if they make themselves a very good Avatar game, and if they come out with another product that is actually centered around the Division, then I think this could pay off. If not, I think they are in for a world of, a big, huge surprise anyways. But these are just my thoughts anyways. I just wanted to go ahead and share them because I felt like it's something we needed to highlight, especially with the Star Wars hiring. We can dive into it in another video, but I didn't want to sit here and talk too much about it because there's so much that, still goes into all of this that we have to kind of look from a whole different perspective. But what I'm just waiting for is the next update from, Ubisoft Massive, or at least the next thing that's going to come on the airwaves. Maybe Yannick answers a question, or maybe one of the other developers or even directors or producers answers a question. I think these are things that are going to definitely help out in terms of how we look at all of this. But talk to me in the comment section. Do you think these growing pains are what they are, or do you think this is just some other issue that we're not discussing on this video? And I'm certain that there are other issues, but I'd love to hear your thoughts nonetheless. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Peace out.